So I'm here again back to talk about American domestic politics. Of course, no surprise. But this is a little different. I'm going to rehash history, say to the 2000s, late 2000s, 2008 era. Um, I was watching a show called Big Short, and it kind of reminded me of the 2008 era during the mortgage crisis and how people were betting against America. Effectively, were betting on the market to crash and were selling people fraudulent mortgages, and people with bad credit were getting homes that they couldn't afford, and they were doing that to make a profit. And it just reminded me to what's similar to what's going on right now with the rampant corruption and greed and the insane inflation and price gouging by corporations, and effectively the collapse of the empire, which we're witnessing right now 15 years later. Again, 15, 16, almost 20 years later, it's like deja vu all over again. Except last time it was the mortgage crisis and unfettered capitalism, which is not really capitalism anymore. It's more like monopoly. I would call it more like a corporate monopoly, corporatism, oligarchy, just corporate greed all around. But it reminded me, and I had family members who lost everything during that mortgage crisis, completely flipped their life upside down. I've known many people in my life that were affected by that. And it just brought back a rage in me and a form of depression, reminding me how America keeps repeating these failed endeavors and how these corporations just rob our country blind. And then when they do unethical things and mess people over, they ask us as taxpayers and the government to bail them out. And of course, the government will happily bail them out. And I just remember how catastrophic that was. And it brings back memories today. And that did greatly affect me. It affected my belief that if you do well in life, you'll succeed. And I actually lost hope of believing that was ever true. And I was like at the time 23. And that's hung on to me ever since. I'm almost 41. So it has affected my ability to move forward in life in a lot of ways, because I feel like any risk I take, I risk losing. And that's the generation that us millennials grew up in. The economy falling apart. You know, the American dream was pulled further away from us. And the Gen Zs are even getting the worst brunt of it, because it's even worse now than it was 15, 20 years ago. But that trauma has hung on to me a long time. Because I knew deep down our country is being ran to the ground by the billionaire class, and they're forever going to hold the rest of us down. And that's just reality. Like, I don't necessarily believe that people can't succeed. They can. They have to strive that much harder. They have to be well connected and know people in high places. But considering I felt like in so many ways I had a hard time developing as a person growing up and had my own issues aside from what was going on in the US economy. So it kind of just added like the extra barrier. So it made me afraid of living life in some ways, you know. So, yeah. But what I was saying is not so much about myself, but just the structural issues in this country overall. that time frustrated me because that's when the Democratic Party won back Congress during the time. George H.W. Bush was leaving office, had effectively a 26% approval rating because of all this stuff going on his watch, between the illegal Iraq war, the crash of Wall Street, the crash of the mortgage of the economy, people losing everything. And then he, of course, gave them a corporate bailout and bailed out Wall Street. What a shocker. And I remember thinking back then, this was like the worst president we ever had. And now I'm looking at what's happening today and I'm thinking to myself, did I say George Bush was the worst president we ever had? Oh man, am I eating my words today. To think that we are now have a president 200 times worse than George Bush. Like, I didn't think it was possible. Like, again, I'm no Bush fan, but when I see the contrast to where we're at today with the current leadership we have in America right now, it makes me feel like I almost miss that, which is sad because it's not something to miss. You know, and I remember feeling such a relief when Obama won the presidency, thinking maybe this country will turn around for the better. Of course, that hope fell sour pretty quickly. I still believe things were going to get a little better, but I didn't have that false hope that he was going to fix everything. And like a lot of people, I grew disenchanted. But again, the Democratic Party took back Congress. Obama was kind of this transformative president, so he appeared as transformative leader, and then he effectively took his movement that got him elected, of course, along with Wall Street and a lot of corporate money, which is no secret. He was serving a bunch of masters, especially two main ones, but had the illusion of organization and being in touch with regular people, and he was a great charismatic guy. But of course, it was all a facade, like all politics are, and basically effectively put his movement on the White House lawn. He got bought off by the consultant class, the Wall Street class, the financial professionals and all that, the foreign policy hawks and all this stuff that basically, like these institutions do, they basically buy off and bribe the presidents, control them, you know, and the system runs its course, of course. So, of course, we didn't get transformative change. And that's when the Wall Street crisis was happening and the economy was completely in shambles and people were hurting. And they were hoping the Democrats were maybe going to go in and do something about it. And of course they didn't. I mean, they did the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but with the help of a few key progressives. I would say Elizabeth Warren was a big one, but a lot of Democrats weren't even on board with that at the time. You know, which we can't even really go too much into detail about now because Trump just dismantled that already. He even took that away. So much for that even. And the Dodd-Frank, you know, which helped millions of consumers get their money back from being unlawfully charged by banks and being defrauded by mortgage institutions, you know. But aside from that, Democrats didn't go much further in helping the working class, and that was their chance to do it then. So I'm going to continue on my next video because this one's about up. So I'll see you guys in the next one. See you later. Great day. Bye.